Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for the morning of September 20th. Here's the 2-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami. There's two systems we're keeping an eye on. We have Tropical Storm Karl east-northeast of the Leeward Islands in a sheared environment, not looking very healthy this morning. But that could have some effects on Bermuda coming up over the weekend. And then we have TD number 13 just west of the Cape Verde Islands, and this will become Tropical Storm Lisa more than likely, but then run into some wind shear and weaken as it moves into the open Atlantic. But all eyes are on Karl this morning, and this could come really, really close to Bermuda. In fact, if you look at the close-up map at Hurricane City, you can see both of our systems on here, but look at the cone of error for Karl, and the system comes close to Bermuda and hangs a right-hand turn. Now, the closest point of approach as of the 5 a.m. advisory this morning from the National Hurricane Center is 109 nautical miles to the east-southeast of Bermuda as this moves off to the northeast. And there's the best performing models inside of the cone, and I'll get to those in just a minute. And we have our TD number 13 out there in the East Atlantic, and you can see that the model consensus and the cone of error shows this is not going to be threatening any land. Also, you'll notice at the top of the screen the countdown clock has been activated. 3 days, 15 hours, 43 minutes until the tropical storm force wind field arrives on the island of Bermuda. Now, this does not mean it's going to hit Bermuda. It just means that the tropical storm force feeder bands and whatnot will be moving into the island area at that time zone, which would be early in the weekend. As this, if the forecast pans out, this does turn to the right real sharp and go south of the island, they would probably have northeast winds on the island gusting the tropical storm force when that countdown clock gets to zero. Also, by clicking on the Bermuda name in the upper left-hand corner there, you can get all the localized information such as webcams and radars and weather observations and everything from the island of Bermuda as this passes by. And by the way, if this happens to become a hurricane warning for the island of Bermuda, it looks like the core of the hurricane is going to hit the island. We will do the hurricane warning show at Hurricane City. The logo is in the upper right-hand corner of the website. Just click the live button and we'll be live. Showing all sorts of media from Bermuda as this passes over. If it's going to be the glancing blow or off to the southeast, we will not be doing any broadcasting on this. Here is the close-up visible satellite from NOAA this morning, and you can see the system is very poorly organized. The low-level center of circulation is well west of the ball of convection here, and the system is undergoing wind shear. It has been out of the southwest for a while now. The system's really never been very organized. There's an upper-level trough to the west, and the winds continue to blow the clouds off to the northeast of the center of circulation around 20 knots, and that's just not very favorable at all. But as this system moves off to the northwest and gets a little closer to Bermuda, the wind shear should lighten up a little bit. It'll be moving in more of a direction that's parallel to the troughiness out in the Atlantic, and the system will have a much better chance to get its act organized. Not to mention the fact that the sea surface temperatures are very warm up there, and if I'm going to show you some graphics coming up of that, this could become stronger once it passes Bermuda, as the waters are warm up there and the shear will be much lighter. Now, I always like to point out the best performing models on any particular system that is threatening land. And in this case, I wanted to show you the EE24, which is a European ensemble model. And the years that I've been doing these best performing models, I don't think I've ever seen a model project 5 days out at only 16 miles off. I mean, if this is true, this is truly an outstanding model on Karl, and this has it going southeast of Bermuda, well southeast of Bermuda, where the hurricane core wind field would be southeast of the island. But 16 miles at 5 days is pretty outstanding. I mean, all the other models out there are probably, anywhere between, 50, 60, 100 miles off or more at 5 days. But this is only 16 miles, so something to keep an eye on. This is why the European model continues to be the most paid attention to model, I guess, of all the models when it comes to tropical systems. And these ensembles, there's 50 of these ensemble members, and number 24 in this particular case is doing outstanding on the system, so I'm sure the National Hurricane Center is keeping track of this one. Here is a map of all of the models as of early this morning, and of course I have Bermuda circled there. And you can see the consensus is to go to the southeast of the island. There's a few ensemble members out near the circle there, near Bermuda, that are the Canadian ensemble members, and they're doing pretty well on this system so far, so I can't rule out that there could be greater effects for the island of Bermuda. I would just recommend the people on the island of Bermuda pay very close attention to the advisories from the National Hurricane Center, and we'll see if there ends up being watches or warnings of some sort. But weaker the system is, the more west it may go, and before the recurvature takes place. One thing is for certain: this will be recurving to the north. This is not going to be a threat to the United States, but the northeast turn could be a little bit later, which would impact Bermuda greater, and these Canadian ensembles need to keep an eye on these just in case. Now, this is the graphic I was telling you earlier about, and what it is the NGX2 model, which is the NABGEM interpolated model, and this has been the best performer on the intensity of Karl so far, only off by about 1.6 knots over 5 days, and this track keeps the bulk of the winds well to the southeast of Bermuda. But notice the trend is for this to expand. The wind field expands and strengthens as it passes Bermuda. So again, I know the National Hurricane Center and the people in the business hate these kind of graphics being passed around, but I like to just take all the data and show people which is performing the best, and then of course I always recommend paying attention to the National Hurricane Center and the local officials in wherever you happen to live as to what could happen down the road. But right now, all the best model indications are that this is not going to be a direct impact on Bermuda, but again, keep an eye on this. But here is the best performer on intensity, and it clearly shows that this is going to pass well to the southeast of Bermuda. But again, I want to mention those Canadian ensembles have been doing pretty well, and they have it going further west before the turn takes place, which would impact Bermuda more. So just pay close attention. Now, usually this time of the year, the systems that come off Africa are really not much of a concern because they generally tend to go north into the open Atlantic with all the troughs, cold fronts, and it's just the steering flow is not set up for long distance trackers to come all the way from Africa to affect the United States. In fact, very rarely do they even get over towards the islands. Usually it might be a very weak tropical wave that might make it across and develop once it gets into the western Atlantic basin. But I'm taking an interest in some of these tropical waves in Africa right now that are very far south in the intertropical convergence zone, and we could see these systems come off and possibly make it all the way across to the western basin for the height of what would be considered by many the second height of the hurricane season, which is around the middle of October. So we're going to be watching that very closely. And finally, if we look at a water vapor loop of the entire Atlantic basin, you can see we have our tropical storm Karl right here moving off to the northwest. We have TD number 13, soon to be Lisa, which will be moving north. And that will clear the path for systems coming off Africa to make their way in. High pressure will build in behind these systems, and they're going to have a chance. Now look at all this moisture out here in the East Atlantic. This is something we haven't seen very much of this year. And the long-range indications from the GFS are that we could see a system come off Africa and travel all the way across toward the Caribbean Sea at a very low latitude, which wouldn't surprise me. Well, it actually would surprise me for this time of the year because they usually turn on out and they never make it across. But the GFS shows this kind of a track making it into the Caribbean toward the Yucatan, and who knows what will happen from there. But there's very warm heat content, 78-degree isotherm temperatures above 78 degrees, well down below the surface of the ocean to tap into. So October could be very interesting coming up here. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll be back with another update in a few days. We'll see what happens with Bermuda. Pay very close attention to Karl. That's it for now. I'm Jim Williams. Thank you for watching.